wait, I can't do that one. We'll make it yearly.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, that was easy, but then when he followed up, he said he never got changed. So it's still monthly. I mean, here's just Josh.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Next Tuesday,
Inoperable motor vehicles applies for
Okay.
5 is a tour of vision, at 5:30 there's dinner, at 6 o'clock the program starts, it's Becky and the Family Resource Centers. Are you able to make that next Wednesday, the 26th?
Unless.
I'm just trying to get a rough
activity
count.
is otherwise permitted by.
I think so.
Who's gonna come and look at this?
Wednesday. I think football's over.
Yeah, we have our joint HRA EDA meeting at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Then you'll hopefully get a little break, rush home or rush back to your business. And then go to the school meeting.
Yeah, I think so. And this is the one, oh, it's all the schools.
All the schools and Pine Tech.
Okay.
You know why there's such a hurry?
I don't know why it's been here, So Matt, are you
How's Josh?
Good, you?
the solid phase? Were you on the ad hoc for that? Yeah, so
Running
you
fast real quick.
It's a pretty diverse group.
Thirsty.
I'm always thirsty.
I was on the pond this morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
We're going camping this weekend.
Well, it's supposed to be nice this weekend, ain't it?
We're part of that. It's brainstorming, but you'll hear it. But it's so fascinating to me where what they're trying to do. Well, it really blows down the money, but there's other things, I'll tell you.
It's one of our top 5 things. Well, not up at-
Yeah.
Well, no, that we're asking for the top 5 for our district. But I really appreciate Terry, because he comes to all those meetings.
Serious.
So anything, thank you for coming.
Morning, Denise.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yes.
We're lucky. Yeah.
But he's out there too.
Yeah. And he's like, he holds himself up. His time has got to be full.
And yesterday got the call to that was cool. I talked to Rick from Creative last week at the library meeting.
Oh, yeah.
About Laxness, about the watershed. He said, I said, please didn't know. And he said, yeah, they tweak language. I don't know what all Craig wants on it. They're gonna tweak it. So he said, Deanna's working on that right now, some of them will stop. And so I come back and I said, are you really working on this? Because we're working on it next week. And she goes, and I said, well, he's gonna be stopping to pick up the new copy. So just so you know, it's but Mille Lacs voted it down too.
Oh, they did. I had
And
not heard
she
that.
said, why doesn't it say Amish? And I said, because they're not their nomination. The people, this is. She goes, oh.
Yeah.
So I didn't think of it that way. So I think that might be the way to keep pushing it is a government entity. You've got cities and counties that they have. So I don't know, but anyways.
I heard from Jessica, the administrator in Aiken. She says they had it on their agenda last week. They did not take any action,
Yeah.
but she thinks it will pass.
I talked to Andy.
Oh, yeah.
Grand Portage, and I talked about.
So you're not at the township meeting?
On Saturday?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, you're gonna go that,
Yeah.
then go camping or what?
yeah, I'm coming back.
Oh,
Actually.
where are you going? camping?
We're just going over to Iowa.
Oh, okay, cool.
Father had a. They can shoot right across that 18.
Yeah.
No, so I was curious, I was just gonna get some more water, hang on. So, here's the reason.
I figured I didn't want to give Steve Olson a free.
Yeah, that.
I said, that was,
Are you going to the township meeting, JJ?
it's not.
Saturday. Are you? Okay.
Also put.
I don't think I sound mad. I don't think I've been to one. I don't think I've been to one since, maybe I have. Maybe I was at one.
I don't remember.
And at least, it's been a while. So my wife. Is it hard for you to get? Right.
I sometimes wonder why I go because I represent only one township and they're all mad at me anyway, so.
Do they usually show up?
We got somebody, but
Usually somebody from the
we
township.
gotta come in training.
Oh, yeah.
Again, just they got training blocks yet and let them run.
Do you? At 9:59.
Yes.
I need to stay like 8 to 10 seconds ahead.
Okay. We have people in Pine City. Ryan, is there anybody in Pine City?
Not that I can see.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, this, before we call the meeting to order, the public is invited to this meeting in person, so there may be people that have dialed in. And we do have a site up in Pine City, in case people wanted to be there for the public hearing on solid waste today. So, with that, we'll call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank everybody for coming. Is anybody here care to speak in public forum?
This is Jen. I'm not speaking. I'm just, however, letting you know there is a gentleman from the Initiative Foundation who is here. He was going to
Okay.
present today. Would you prefer him to present from here or to come to you in Sandstone?
You can stay there.
Yeah, it's, Jen, it's his choice. It's Carl, right? Yeah, so his choice, if he wanted to head up the highway, he could come up here and I'm sure he'd make it before we got to him on the agenda, or he can stay in Pine City.
Okay.
Thanks, Jen. If not, we'll move on to the agenda. David,
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we have additional information for item number 4 to add a commissioner claim form. And then on consent agenda item number 7, just update the date of the AMC annual conference to December 4th through the 7th versus the 5th through the 7th. And then regular agenda item number 7 on chart number 4, there was just an error in the graph where 2 of the bars were reversed on the social services. So I'll cover that in the presentation, but just bring that to your attention.
I'll second it.
we got a motion made by Ludwig, second by Lundgren to adopt the agenda. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll look for approval of the minutes of October 4th, 2022 County Board minutes and summary for publication.
I'll move them.
I'll second it.
Motion by Moore, second by Lundgren. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then the minutes of boards, reports, and correspondence. Department of Health and Human Services audit letter from October 6th. Department of Natural Resources, notice of land acquisition in Arna Township, September 29th, 2022.
So move. Second.
I had a question on that, Mr. Chair.
Yep,
That's the one from dated, what, September 29th for acquisition of 11 acres?
yes.
I guess, we have any say in that? I mean, I know there's been ongoing discussion about the amount of tax forfeited land and PILT payments. And part of this letter says, in an effort to build on the good working relationship that the DNR has with county governments throughout the state, then it says this new addition will fall under the in lieu of tax, county tax payment, but they haven't raised our tax payment schedules at all. That's still
Right now,
Legislation and
right now, that legislation is pending for any raise in that.
so do we have to take more land off of the tax roll when we're not getting compensated adequately? Or do we don't have a say?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
Commissioner Walden. The county does not have a say in the sense there is no veto authority. If the DNR wants to acquire it, it can do that. In this case, this 11-acre parcel, the owners approached the DNR and requested that the DNR purchase it. It fits in with the plan that the DNR has with their other public lands. And so it's a willing seller who's trying to sell their land. And then it also did get routed through the Land and Zoning Committee just to get some initial feedback. They wanted the DNR to come and do a broad presentation, but given the facts in this case, it didn't seem like it warranted, but I would defer to the Land and Zoning Committee if they wanted to add any more insight.
Is there any way, what's the amount of tax dollars difference now, or what does the county lose?
It probably is negligible on 11 acres. I don't know if it would be $4 or $8. I don't know.
Kelly, I think is on the call, and I don't know if she has an actual number or an estimate.
I was just looking it up.
I knew you were.
Just a moment.
So there'd be the amount lost, and then you have to take in consideration whatever tilt is, and then do the math, see
Right,
the net loss.
right. In most cases, even at the PILT payment, it comes out to be close to the same, especially on acquired land. On tax forfeit land, I think there's a different formula. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, there are different formulas. I don't, off the top of my head, know which one.
On acquired land, which is land like, we had a sale on the Snake River a few years ago of a pretty big parcel. But those acquired acres are PILT payments are different than on tax forfeited acres.
Oh.
And it'd be much like if the Deer Hunters Association, for instance, purchased a piece of land and then turned it into a wildlife management area and turned it in, and so it became under DNR control. There's a pretty large one just over the county line west of Terry's place, actually. That happened just a couple of years ago.
Mr. Chair, I think Kelly has got.
Okay, Kelly.
Okay, so the 2022 taxes on the whole property are $172. And of that, 96 of it is the county's dollars. And I was just doing the calculation as to approximately what the PILT would be. So just a moment on that.
Thank you.
So the PILT payment on that will be about $56. So there is a difference of about $40 less.
So then you gotta raise somebody's $40 to offset that is the answer to that then, right?
Correct. So we have a motion made by Ludwig, seconded by Moore. Any more discussion? Not
And just to clarify, the motion is not to support or not support the acquisition. It's to acknowledge
acknowledge
the
the
receipt of the letter.
receipt of the letter and the Department of Health and Human Services audit letter. That's what the motion is for. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Then we move on to the consent agenda, which you've had in front of you for quite some time.
Make a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll second.
That Ludwig? Motion by Lovegren, second by Ludwig. To approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion, questions? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, public hearing, solid waste ordinance 2022-53. So we're gonna have a presentation of the ordinance. And then we'll have time for board questions. When the board is done, then the public will have an opportunity to ask any questions or provide input.
I'm Caleb Anderson, the Land and Resources Manager in the Planning, Zoning and Solid Waste Department. And thank you, Ryan. So we've been working on a solid waste ordinance. It's not a new concept. The county has had a solid waste ordinance since 1990. There's several of the components of that ordinance have kind of been updated at the statutory level. Some of the policies within that were no longer being followed, just kind of fell to the wayside over the last 30 years. So it was kind of in our department a goal to take a fresh look at that ordinance and kind of see where do we want to be. So the ordinance seeks to correct issues deemed not enforceable by a court case involving a neighboring county. So our 1990 ordinance, there's a very similar ordinance that was adopted by many of our neighboring counties. Over time, people have issues with it. They go to court. Some things got brought up as needing more enforceability. So we kind of wanted to have, that was one of our objectives, to fix that. Number two, provide improved processes for licenses built upon statewide experience. Again, so most counties have a solid waste ordinance, if not all. And as you do something over a period of time, you learn things, you come across new issues and you update your policies. Item 3, reflect modern statutory requirements and authorizations. There are a number of things in Minnesota statute that the county is required to do regarding solid waste, and there are a number of things that we are authorized to do. So we tried to take a look at those to make sure we're being as restrictive as statute, where we're required to do so. And the last there, affirm policy positions of the county in 2022. There were a few things that our department, you know, you get a job and you're trained in, this is how you do that. And there's a few things that you look at in this ordinance that, oh, but we don't do that. So it's kind of, well, you don't want to just start doing work that is for no reason. So we kind of just want to take a fresh look at these policies and see what are actually, what's important to us today. Next slide, please. The ordinance development process. So this has been simmering for a while. About a year ago, almost to the day, the county board created an ad hoc committee composed of what we tried to make a nice cross section of the county from north to south, public, private. A number of our partners were at the table. We had a meeting with them back in December just to see, okay, what with solid waste, what are the goals? What are the problems that you see? What's going well? Which we'd really focus on. And then we were at in a good position where there is a statewide model solid waste ordinance, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, that we were able to take and tweak as our committee kind of felt necessary. We brought that back to them at meeting 2, right in the middle, further work through, and there were some slogging meetings. They were long and we were in the details. So we were very appreciative of the patience and dedication of those folks. But we got through it. We had a review by the county auditor, the county attorney, Dave Minke, county administrator, assisted as well with kind of fine tuning some of the mechanics of the ordinance. In April, we discussed I think it's Article 5 in the ordinance that authorizes us to have a solid waste management fee. Consistent with Minnesota statute, which we exercise. So it was also kind of an opportunity where we took a fresh look at that and said, are there programs that we want to expand or implement under that solid waste management fee? And we talked about business recycling being an issue mostly. And we ended up not really going that route at this time. In June, I did a presentation to you all where we went pretty in depth into the ordinance. So my slides here are not so in-depth because I've already subjected you to such painstaking details. So this is the abridged version. And that's where we're at today. So you looked at it in June. We made a couple tweaks since then based on your feedback. JJ particularly had a few comments and edits that we weren't able to incorporate. And here we are today, public hearing. So today you'd have the opportunity to take testimony, approve, table for further review, not approve, whatever it would be. Part of that would be repealing if approved, we would also be repealing the 1990. Next slide, please, Brian. So here's one of the main edits that we spent a bit of time on back in June as the county board. There is some language about storing junk and solid waste on private property, and this is a section about residential sites. And the language in the model ordinance included that you could not have lumber piles and building materials that were not actually being used in construction on that premises. So you couldn't basically be storing materials for other job sites on a residential property. And it seemed like that was not a fit for us. So we're proposing to delete that. Another place here, the last line and a half, or starting at dead or down trees, that was a piece that was in the model ordinance that we tailored a little bit more. So they said, the model ordinance said that dead and down trees cannot be stored in open areas of residential sites. And we added the words within city limits. And that was, thankfully, we had a member from a municipality on our committee who said, we don't want big brush piles in the cities that kind of accumulates for a year or two. So where in the rural areas, that's a little bit more normal and acceptable. Go ahead.
So I'm thinking of Rock Creek. Rock Creek is really more like a township if you look at it than a city, but
Sure.
That would include them as in the city limits.
Yeah, that's a good point. You have a question?
Well, you just said you don't want it laying around for a year or two, but I guess where does it say the timeline on this? Where does it? And the other thing is, since the tornado, the city limits of Hinckley, there's still trees piled in the road right away. That's I guess is a concern. So isn't what's good for one should be good?
Yeah.
No.
I
I
guess,
think this thing needs a lot of work yet. I mean, I'm glad you're going through this like this. If we
yeah.
want to take the time to go through each one, but
I think with most of the language, we have, as solid waste department professionals, the ability to use some judgment. And where there's something like a tornado, I think clearly that's different. That's a disaster that of course will need time. And even at any time where we do identify, a lot of times it's when a complaint arises. And in the 7 years that I've been at Pine County, I've never fielded a complaint about brush and dead trees. I wouldn't foresee this. Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, there is a section of the ordinance that outlines that discretion. So it is a part of the ordinance that if there is extraordinary circumstances, that there would be the ability to make those accommodations.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
yeah.
So I have a question too. The tires. And the only reason I'm gonna bring it up because we're ag and a lot of our farmers do the silage and they put the tarp over it and they use tires and rope. And they have big stacks of tires.
Yeah.
So if they're using them in a function like that, you're probably not gonna get a complaint.
Right.
But, but
Yeah.
I think that's,
It's only residential sites. So
Right.
if you're a farmer storing silage, et cetera, you're probably an agricultural site, not a residential site.
so when you say residential, are you assuming it's within the city limits and not the country residential?
no, there's a lot of developments in single homes and
I know, I'm just saying, so the public,
Yeah.
I'm having that, I just want it out there.
So there is a specific section just beneath this I'm just showing you the residential sites, but it's on page 16 of the ordinance where it identifies agricultural sites and there is much less prohibitions like than there is here. In tires, it's not. But yeah, I mean,
Stuff too, right?
I'm sorry.
That went too quick, some part by farmers. who-
Right.
We dealt with that extensively and I know that I got a couple of phone calls before the meeting and so I said I will discuss those.
Sure.
And it was all ag related.
Well, you do have, like in agricultural sites, it says clearly right here. No person shall place or store upon the open areas of any agricultural site. So if somebody has 2,000 acres, which I do know a farmer that has close to 2,000 acres, what's to hurt having something in an open area in the middle of 2,000 acres, first of all? But it says no person shall place, okay, inoperable motor vehicles, appliances, fixtures, or equipment so damaged, deteriorated, or obsolete. So, I mean, tires, equipment. And I guess who's gonna be the one to judge
I guess,
damage?
so
there's your
AJ,
like
the problem we have is because it's happened here, it's happened to other counties. When somebody like First State Tire says, you got a lot of property, we got a lot of tires, and they haul in 250 semi loads of tires and start dumping them on your property, and they pay you some cash for it, and they leave. Now those tires are there,
We had that in Rock Creek and we got stuck with that land.
right? Then it goes tax forfeit, and who ends up with it? That's why we get to this point, because I don't like paying for picking up 50,000 tires that shouldn't have been there in the first place.
I just think there's some language in here that's it's gotta be written better, because I believe you said you copied and pasted this.
I think it's, we're never gonna get perfect language ever, and we can spend the next 20 years editing these things. But at some point, you have to say, our main goal here is to keep piles of tires and somebody from bringing in mattresses, whatever, and piling them on the ground. That's part of our whole economic development structure. Nobody wants to drive down the road and see 100,000 tires piled up.
I agree with you, Steve. I think there is a way, though, we could say, like statutes do.
The ordinance shouldn't be that much. You could say, and the exception to the rule is if you can show that you're using the product, you know.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem though, Matt. In Kanabec County, they have a ordinance against all tires, except for maybe covering the silage spot.
Yeah.
Because they had people coming in and saying, well, we're building a road. So they dig up the dirt, they pile 50,000 tires in this half mile of road and cover it back up. Now there's 50,000 tires sitting on that piece of property that who knows what else is with those tires.
But like the tire one, if I can, Mr. Chair, for example, the tire one, that's an approved fill. You can use recycled ground tires as a fill. And if we do look at other counties, there's a county just north of us, Carlton County, County Line Road, and I believe 11, they did a major road project. And it's fair to assume that everything that is buried there does run onto our county. So if it's approved there in that county,
It doesn't.
there's just
it
a
doesn't
lot of
mean-
language here that
I
opens us up.
I think the counties that have said we are not going to allow that anymore have said, we don't care if you're building the road or what. We do not want those waste tires accumulating in our county. And that's not what the ordinance is saying at all. But
We've also seen them staged on properties where there is no destination for it.
right.
Where then that's a risk without something like a letter of credit or something. And that's where I think if you're using a site as a transfer station, it's almost more of a land use issue though, something like that. But I guess I kind of agree with Steve. We took your comments seriously. The committee reviewed all this language. And we knew full well, when we looked at this language, that there's going to be people that are going to take shots at this. We knew full well. And we kind of took the same approach that you're not going to have perfect language on this. At least in this, we are conforming to kind of what the state standard is. It's the model ordinance that has kind of been broadly accepted across the state.
Can I add, I'm gonna take my comment on Rock Creek off. I'm sorry. So I just read it more and it says residential properties within a city. And so I'm sorry I brought that up.
Sure. So agricultural properties would not be included.
Right,
Of which that's a huge part of Rock.
right. Thank you.
The one comment I'd just like to make is, I don't think Caleb, your department is gonna put on badges like the sheriff's department and go, door to door looking for this stuff. Like you said, we've all had the people call us. I fielded, I don't know how many calls about, hey, my neighbor is setting up a junkyard. And we've had townships call us that have said, what can we do? We know what's going on here. It's a disaster. They're bringing in all this junk. Is there anything we can do to head this off before it goes tax forfeited, before it causes a problem on everybody else's neighboring property? And this just gives you a little teeth to maybe go in there and say, hey, guys, if you want to do this, you got to have a permit. Hey, if you're going to stockpile tires, I had a piece of property that we did shredded tires for a driveway. It had to have all the permits. It had to have everything. I don't know if you guys were there or who was there. That had to make sure it was all done correctly. Not just like Steve said, hey, I'm going to build a road. I'm going to dig a 20-foot deal and put, 50 feet of tires in it. And yeah, okay, sorry, I'm not gonna, type of deal. So I think this just gives you guys, and it's updating a 30-year-old plan anyways, to a little bit more. So I don't know. That's my feeling on
Well,
this.
back to what he said. So who's gonna be the person with the badge looking for the stuff that's not stacked properly or stored? Who is gonna be ultimately who's
So
gonna?
we are tasked with enforcement of the ordinance, the solid waste department is. It's mostly complaint driven or where a complaint is filed. So where there's a clear violation, someone calls us about it, that's going to be the vast majority of where we would implement the ordinance. And understand also that we're really focusing on a small section of the ordinance at this point. The vast majority of the purpose of this ordinance is for solid waste facilities that when someone wants to open up a landfill and they say, hey, Pine County, there's very little zoning, let's do it here. We have a system in place to make sure it's done responsibly. Same for transfer stations, for solid waste incineration facilities. Hauling of garbage, that's been an issue across the state where there's not always responsible conduct in hauling garbage. So the vast majority of that are those protections. And a lot of those, like we've been, since 1990, we've been licensing solid waste haulers. And we're very fortunate to have very good haulers in Pine County, and we have not really had issues. But the system is in place if there is a bad actor or someone who's who needs some accountability. So I want to highlight that the vast majority of this is about how we manage garbage in Pine County.
Yeah, I was only making my ag comments for the public to hear because we're talking about things that I know they're here this part. And we do have exceptions.
Sure.
Hey,
To the egg, that's a big thing for me, one of them right here, and it just says now, if the equipment is so deteriorated or obsolete, who's gonna, would that be somebody on your staff that has farming experience can debate the farmer why he's keeping his plow and why the neighbor is saying the plow looks bad sitting in his equipment lineup? How do you?
I think a lot of times we can work through that stuff just cooperatively. There's been a number of cases. And number one, and also remember, I've never fielded a call about a plow in the last 7 years or a hay vine or a disc vine. Those calls don't come in.
So that could be just removed then from here, since you've never
Sure,
complained?
and the committee discussed that, but they chose to leave it in case there is a situation where it is an issue. We can imagine that can happen. We don't foresee it being, that's not why we went after or, pursued a new ordinance.
So just one more thing, you said like before, a tool in your toolbox. So if you want to go into somebody's property, it just gives you more leeway to look for stuff or to.
Well,
decide
We
what
don't have authority to go on someone's property without their consent.
complaint or complaint.
Yeah.
One more comment too.
Yeah.
And just on the other side, a little bit of that too is I think if a neighbor, let's just call it out. A Twin Cities person moves up next to a big farm and looks across the thing and sees the farmer's lineup of machinery and says, I don't like this. They dig into this thing and it says, hey, it's obsolete. Caleb and his group has a discretion to say, no, this is fine. They can argue if it's obsolete, they can argue whatever, but ultimately you can just say, no, sorry, this is the way it is. So I think we haven't had any, I have never fielded a call that it seems like you're picking on anybody or your group is picking on anybody trying to push people out or anything like that. So, I don't know.
One of the big comes our system is, when we have issues like that, we have a team of county zoning staff professionals that we can work through those and make decisions on. We bring it up the ladder when needed, we bring it through lease when it seems appropriate. And so we're not given a blank checkbook.
And the other end of that is if us as a county board thought you were overstepping your boundaries, we could essentially get involved, correct?
And there's an appeal process.
Yeah.
And we are required in this, okay, next slide.
Okay.
Let's go one more slide further, please. Okay, I wanted to highlight the inspections, violations, enforcement, which we're now getting into. Appeals of enforcement actions are to be heard by the county board, yours truly. So all staff generated notices of abatement, license suspension. So when we send people official notices, you're in violation, we have to state their appeal option. And that will come before you. Let's quick hit the last slide. I just highlighted, there was also in June, a discussion about the sheriff's office needing to access garbage cans for investigations or whatever. So we made an edit in here, no person may commercially collect, transport and dispose of solid waste without having a license. So if a department of the county was hauling garbage as part of an investigation, had to collect something, they would not be doing so commercially. So we sought to, fix that issue that was identified.
Yeah, one note, Caleb, actually, as it read, it shall be illegal to use another person's solid waste storage container, inspect its contents, or remove its contents unless provided prior authorization by the owner or lawful custodian of the container. That was the one I brought up in case there was an investigation or something.
The court.
It just doesn't get thrown out by an attorney and somebody walks on a very serious crime.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the courts have determined already if the garbage can is back by the alley or at the end of the driveway and it's set out there, that's discarded property. That the courts have went back and forth on that forever. Now, if it's still up by the house or right next to the door where they still could be coming out and throwing something in it, that's a little bit different. And I'm sure Jeff could speak to that. I'm a little rusty on it, but that's a general
Should it
idea.
just be removed then, do you think, and not even have it in there? Because it's still in there. How I just read it, it's still.
I think that's a Reese question, probably.
I guess Reese did have opportunity to review the ordinance. He didn't identify that as an issue.
Yeah, so page 25, subpart D, unauthorized container use. It doesn't clarify where it sits or anything.
But there's exceptions. I think that might be not geared to law enforcement.
I don't think that was the intent either.
Well, I would just, before we vote on something, if we're voting today.
So, Mr. Chair,
I'm not seeing it that way, JJ, but
Just wanted to bring it up.
if you wanted to open public hearing, maybe there'd be other questions or comments.
all right.
Related.
Is there anybody that wishes to speak from the public? We have people in line, Ryan?
That's coming up to mine.
We don't have anybody here currently.
Well, all right,
I would like to speak. Discussi Croup.
okay.
Okay, there's only one other person I can see out there who knows what I'm talking about here, and that would be Steve Hallen. So Dale Powers attempted to do this 15 years ago to create a solid waste ordinance. There was objection from every township he went to. I was there. And a lot of the things that are being said now were said then. He did it the right way. I'm going to say in a way that he went out to the public and he got their opinion. It wasn't a committee of people selected by the county. It was the residents who pay taxes. Okay, so the complaint driven means anyone who passes through, and this is something that Josh mentioned, but a lot of these things that I'm saying came from that time. Anybody who passes through or is a weekend visitor can lodge a complaint. Feuding neighbors can launch a complaint. It creates a contention amongst neighbors. We don't need any more of that out here. And say maybe you come to my property, okay? And because of complaint of a non-licensed vehicle, and I'm going to use this, I'm going to tattle on myself. Don't come out here, I'm telling you right now. It's an older vehicle. I can't be an exception to the law. I understand that. But what I'm going to tell you is that was the vehicle that my husband took me on my first date. And it's going to hang around here forever. I don't care if it falls apart. If I have to go to jail for it, I'll go to jail for it. Come on, get real out here, okay? Also, whether another county has a solid waste ordinance or not, that shouldn't be the reason we're making these decisions, okay? You guys can think for yourself, and I've mentioned this before. Think about what your residents said. If you were to go out and do the same thing that Dale did 15 years ago, you'd get the same answers. We haven't increased in population in Pine County in 10 years. So, it's not like we've got so many more people here who are demanding that. Now, if you're going to create an ordinance for tires, you can do that. Create a tire ordinance if that's your worry, and then have a surety bond attached to it that says, you're going to have to remove these. You've got a certain amount of time to have these tires out. Say it's for a project. You've got that 2 years or whatever it is. Your surety bond will cover removing them if you don't. So there are ways to handle those tires. And how about that old piece of machinery? There's one down the road from me. I love this. It looks like an old plow, a real old plow. Have it at the end of their driveway, and they've got planters sitting on the top of it with flowers, and it's great. Maybe we can all take that old machinery and put some planters on top of it. And this can be handled with separate ordinances. Like I said, the tire thing can. Now, your toolbox shouldn't become an arsenal to use against the residents. That's my opinion. Your arsenal, you can be more creative and more thoughtful about your arsenal. And being out in the township, I understand that there are mattresses and ditches. That's not going to be covered with this ordinance. Someone's going to throw it there, and who are you going to get? I don't know. You're going to have to go clean it up. There it is. It's not going to be a resident. It's somebody who drives through and leaves it. There are some trash places. I know that. You know that. Find a creative way to deal with that, or get together with the townships to create a way to deal with that. Don't push, okay? Work together. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? I will just address quickly some of Gussie's concerns. This is not a new ordinance. This is something that was put in place in 1990, the solid waste ordinance. If you if you look at it, most of the tweaks are to the people that haul garbage. Way to get at the way to, instead of having a separate ordinance for tires, a separate ordinance for, I don't think it says if you have one car that's unlicensed. I have neighbors that have come to me and taken me to their neighborhood and showing me a place that's probably got 75 to 100 cars. They're not a licensed junkyard. They've got old semis, old campers, and old cars strewing about their pasture. And that, in my estimation, that's an issue because all those vehicles have fluids in them that we don't want in our drinking water. And when they start leaking antifreeze and transmission fluid, rear end grease, engine oil, and that gets into the aquifer. I'm no aquifer scientist, but I do know one thing that I've read is that a cup full of diesel fuel can contaminate an aquifer for many, many miles. So I think that's what I'm concerned about. More than anything is that if we do have licensed, we call them junkyards, I do anyway, they have facilities to remove the fluids in a safe manner and squish those cars or whatever they do with them. Save the parts for resale or whatever. But when they're just strewing across the piece of property by the dozens and dozens, that's an issue. And that's what I'm concerned about. And the tire issue is an issue that could be taken care of with this ordinance. It's an issue we've dealt with in the county, not to the scale of some counties, because I think we've been a little more diligent in allowing them in here. But I think it's been by grace rather than by our actions of lawful keeping them out.
I have two questions.
Yep.
One, the place that you went to where there's so many cars, can you go to those or are they grandfathered in because of the time that this passed?
So if they're collecting cars that are not operable, it's written in here that they would need a recycling facility license. And there are certain requirements that they must manage the fluids. And it's not to say they can't have them. It's that they just have to do it responsibly. They screen it, that type of thing.
So then two, and I don't remember how many, but I was on the Hinkley Town Board when we passed our zoning. And you can have so many cars that are not licensed on your property. So would those override I think this is probably more lenient than Hinkley Township zoning, to be honest with you.
Right. It wouldn't override either body, the county or the township would have the discretion and authority to exercise its ordinance.
Okay, thank you.
Usually we try to work, if there's overlap, we try to work with that other entity to say, okay, what makes sense here? If you guys are already kind of pursuing this, we'll go for it.
So on that note, then we have a lot of townships that have zoning and people don't stand up, they have to take these people to court to get things fixed. But going to court is a really expensive thing for a township to do. So with this, would that help those townships to be able to, would you help the townships to be able to hold up the zoning that goes with them when it comes to this type of stuff?
If we were connected with the township about an issue, kind of chatting about it, we could review the ordinances to kind of see which ordinance more adequately addresses what we're concerned about as an issue for the community. And then, kind of work out which ordinance would make more sense to be used. So yes, if it would fall within this ordinance and be addressed well within the ordinance, that would be something where we could relieve the township of that burden and the county could pursue it if it was a fit for what this ordinance seeks to achieve.
That's one thing that I've heard from a lot of different townships is we have the zoning, but we don't have the finances to really stand up for what they say. And so, I know that people have asked for help in the past, but because there hasn't been anything that has stood up that said, no, our zoning didn't qualify for that. So if we could help the townships with that too, that would be a huge benefit for many of them.
Yeah, there's been a lot of discussion about that. And I think Reese's office has executed contracts with townships and cities to do that. So that would probably be the best way for that to happen.
Okay.
For the discomfort, I guess I'll just share a little bit. The discomfort with the junk storages, I think we can think of nuances where it would feel like we're picking on people. But while we do that, I think we're forgetting that the calls that we actually receive are by and large actual solid waste blight issues with, there was one just outside of the city of Sandstone where a person, just moves into the neighborhood and then someone else buys a place across the street and they just start rolling in junk car after junk car. And it's not the neighborhood that they bought into. That's happened many times. And without an ordinance in place, you don't have an answer for that person. There was another, in one of the smaller cities up on 23, there was a gentleman who had lived in his house throughout his career and he was ready to move on. He was going to sell his house. His neighbor started accumulating junk. Every person who came to look for a house showing said, what's going on here? And the realtor finally told him, I'm not showing this house anymore. You're not, it's not worth my time. So he couldn't sell his house because that community was so deteriorated in absence of ordinance controls on solid waste. So I think those stories also need to be remembered for what that's worth.
Yeah, Josh.
And that is, we went through blight ordinances. We went through, I wasn't here for junkyard ordinance. We went through all this stuff. And ultimately, we had determined zoning was the best thing, but that, because we've all had townships come and say, hey, our levy is $30,000 or $40,000 for us to fight this. It's gonna cost us $75,000. County, what can you do to help? Well, without zoning or without something, there isn't nothing to help. And the biggest thing to remember is if someone finds in this ordinance something that just doesn't work, we can amend it, correct? This ordinance is here. It's already been here. We're updating it. A lot of stuff has changed in 30 years. Most of the vehicles that were built in the 1990s are no longer on the road. I'll just say that because that's my wheelhouse. So I would assume ordinances are kind of come with the times, but we've dealt with a lot of this stuff, and I appreciate the thought and effort and the committee that has went into this and put a lot of time and effort into it. So
Yeah,
But yeah, I'm gonna add that. So that's where the appeals process comes.
yes,
That's gonna come back in front of the board and we're gonna see if there's something. We'll take a drill down.
just so we're clear here now, we are gonna close the public hearing part and we're back to the board discussion here. And we can continue.
Can I add, working in the auditor's office, I heard so many complaints about people and their garbage, like Josh was saying, you were saying about people not being able to sell their property because of the garbage. And I heard that a lot. And so that is a huge issue. But I would also like to say that Matt was talking before the meeting started, and there were people from, we said Nickerson and Carrick and different townships around, and you had a garbage hauler who was he's very good at what he does. He's been at a couple of our meetings, and I've watched some places that his position, his job cleaned up and did a really good job. I mean, we have a lot of people that have that concern and that work with this area throughout the county. So for Gussie, do you want to add maybe a little bit as to who all was on that? I really appreciate the committee that was there. We had Matt and Steve, but outside of the county people, can you?
Yeah, there were three township officers on it. Pocahontas Township, Windermere Township, Nickerson Township.
Okay.
There was some from the city of Sandstone. Matt Ludwig and Steve Hallen sat on it.
and somebody in the garbage business.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that's lost in all this is the licensing, the thing about solid waste. Because if you don't have any teeth in any rules, people are smart. They look where there are no rules and they say, you know, we're going to we need a place to expand our garbage disposal business. Let's see, look at what's up in that area. There's not many people that live up there. Let's go acquire some land up there.
We just had that not that long ago where I can't think of who it was, but just outside of Asco, I'm going from Sandstone, where they brought in a ton of cars. They were buying people's cars and putting them on this guy's property and said, we're going to take care of it. We're going to pay you. He'd never paid for the cars. And then the farmer had to pay a lot of money to clean up because all the fluids went all over when he crushed the cars. And the guy kind of, and he did the same thing down south. But yeah, Pine County was triggered for that. So yes.
So does anybody have any more questions? We can consider adoption of this ordinance today. We can kick the can down the road. Or we can do whatever we want, I guess, but
So
we've had this in front of us for over a year. So
I was just thinking, we have that township association meeting on Saturday. Would that be a good place to bring it up? Or is that taking it out of the realm?
we can bring it up. We can bring it up. I think we got a little discombobulated on this public hearing. We had some people that were all cranked up to come to speak in favor of it. And then it got moved a week and then we made arrangements for them. And I don't know what happened, but if they were scared to come on TV or what, but
Okay.
I think it's a great idea.
that's,
For the local government unit for their respective residents. I think it's a great idea.
So essentially, we're just looking for a motion to move this ahead. Correct?
yeah,
So I would move ordinance number 2022-53. With that comment, definitely we can bring it up to the township officers meeting this weekend, but that really, without being on the agenda or anything, I just, we've asked for a lot of input, but it's not. So.
That's true. It was asked for input too, wasn't it? From outside. It was
Right.
input that was asked for, yeah.
right.
I'll second his motion.
Could you repeat the part about the township officer meeting, Josh? Do you think this would be a good, I mean, we can bring it up there, I mean, as the new ordinance, but to try to, I mean, you'd need, we've asked for township input. We've got township input to bring this ordinance there and throw it in front of everybody and say, hey, what do you think of it? Yeah, there's all kinds of,
Be excessive.
yeah, and that ain't the forum.
It's a hard venue to have a meaningful conversation about, this is a 55-page document. I think, yeah.
I mean, we can update them to say, hey, we updated our ordinance. Take a peek at it. If you got any issues, let us know. We can always.
And that update in the appeals process, we can tweak any of the clauses.
And I would also highlight some of the overlap or interaction with the township ordinances and how some of the things that the townships are actively concerned about or working on, because that's often what you do in a zoning ordinance is be prepared for a landfill, whatever it may be. Have them be aware of the overlap and where we're here to work with them.
Any more discussion?
I have one more.
Yep.
I'd also like to go on, be in the record that we did share a memo with all the solid waste haulers about this public hearing. So all of the solid waste haulers who are directly regulated under this were notified well in advance.
Caleb, the reports that were required by the solid waste haulers to report everything they collect in the timeframe, was that changed at all?
It's not new. And it's required by statute.
Was it weekly? Was it monthly? Was it yearly?
I only see it annually.
Annual. So their reports, right?
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
One opposed? Then we'll look at the considering the adoption of a $200 fee for solid waste facility licenses.
We just are proposing a $200 fee for the solid waste facility license to align with the same fee that the solid waste haulers pay and have for several years.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
So there isn't one now?
The 1990 ordinance requires a solid waste facility license. But to my knowledge, we haven't seen a resolution that the fee has been adopted by the county board.
So is this like Nelson's Recycling in Pine City?
Right.
Like a,
Officially, they would be, unless the city is requiring licensing, a facility like that will need a license under this and would have in 1990, never as well. But we just must never have done that because we didn't have a fee.
okay. Sounds good. I just was curious.
How many places do we think we have in the county? 6?
I think that out of the gates, that's kind of about what I would anticipate.
I have a question.
Yep.
The $200 fee, how do you come up with or who sets that, I guess? How,
You guys have the authority to set that.
is that like?
It's just a staff proposal. I think we'll learn about how much money, time and effort it takes in those licenses. And we can't make as informed of a suggestion at this time. So that's where we're starting.
It seems like you looked at a lot of other neighboring counties. Did you look at other neighboring, what they charge or what kind of the norm is or?
No, I think we more align with what the haulers pay for their license fee, which is $200.
I think that's a fair, because in essence, they become haulers. A lot of them probably are.
I'll make the motion to adopt the $200 fee.
I'll second that.
A motion by Lovegreen, seconded by Moore. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Personnel Committee report. Who's going to take
I can
that?
take that. We met on October 10th. And I'll do the standard breakdown. Health and Human Services, we recommended the reclassification of a social worker position in Children's Services Unit to a Chemical Health Resource Coordinator position, which will be grade 11 at $27.43 an hour. We acknowledge the resignation of social worker Kelly Friday effective December 16th, 2022, approved backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. In Pine County, do you want to do them by unit or at the end? Approve it.
We can do them all.
Okay, all right. Pine County Sheriff's Department and Corrections, we acknowledge the resignation of Corrections Officer Kelly Finch effective October 14th. Approve the backfill of the position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. Acknowledge the resignation of Corrections Officer Rebecca Blodgett effective October 10th and approve backfill of position and any subsequent vacancies that may occur due to internal promotion or lateral transfer. And recommend the Senior Corrections Officer position, which is a grade 8, and recommended authorizing up to 4 incumbents with promotion at the discretion of the jail administration and in accordance with the labor agreement. No change in total FTE office for corrections officers. It's just an internal. And then in administration, we recommend updated drafts to section 31, lactation and breastfeeding policy, and section 33 of the workplace wellness policy. And the rest was just pretty much general discussion. And I will move those, Mr. Chair.
I'll second them.
Any discussion?
I just
Yep.
have one comment. I do believe all the resignations, like one person was gonna do her own, like it wasn't, we're losing them to different counties. I can't remember the corrections officer. If that one, I think she just got out of the field, correct? Or, yeah. So I know we've been kind of tracking that. Are we losing people to different counties? Are we this, are we that? So I think all this, or both of them or whatever, all three of them were not.
I think we're back up to 12 openings, but I think there was some people that were coming in during the last week and I don't know what happened there. So we have 12 openings in our jail.
That's huge all over the state.
That's what we heard. That's what we heard at our Northeast conference.
Everybody.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And David, you taking it? Who's doing the next one?
Oh, the North Pine
Are
Hospital
we,
District?
are we all done with the,
Yes, yeah, so there are some issues that relate to the senior correction officer position that we will talk about in our session on the labor negotiation piece at the
Okay.
end.
all right, okay. North Pine Hospital District, update by the district board members. Who do we have here? Fran Leving? Yep. And Barb? Fran, you're gonna talk first? Okay,
So I need the next one.
Perfect.
I don't know technology, so.
that's all right.
We live off.
You
the
just
grid.
talk.
We live off the grid out there.
You just talk and we'll.
Here we go.
Good after.
So hospital districts were created by the state legislature in 1986. And the idea was that townships and cities could form a district, they could levy taxes, and their function would be to provide access to quality healthcare in rural Minnesota. So that's how our hospital district started. We can borrow money, we can issue bonds, we can operate a hospital or nursing home. We will be governed by a board with one member from each of the townships and from each of the cities, and one member who was at large. When we started, we had 11 townships and 6 cities. And then in 2014, my township, Udozi, we joined the hospital district. So we now have 12 townships and 6 cities. And the best way for me to explain it to people who don't know, they'll say, well, friend, what do you do? I mean, what is it? And I said, it's like a school district. It's like a school district. Townships and cities form a district to provide education. My township also belongs to something called the Tri-Township Disposal District. It's now 5 townships, but they pick up garbage, levy taxes from us who live in those 5 townships, and they pick up our garbage a couple times a month.
And we should go to 6 townships, Fran. She could go to 6.
Should be all of them.
Yeah.
$20 a year.
I know.
Okay, so Barbara's gonna take over now.
Thanks, Fran. So I'm Barb Fisher. I'm from Danforth Township. And I'm actually relatively new to the whole hospital district. So when we retired and moved up into Pine County several years ago, I volunteered to assist a neighbor who was having some health issues with on the hospital district. And so I've been a member since 2018. And in that time period, Fran's role is she's vice chair of the hospital district. I'm treasurer as well as the head of the governance committee. And so I'm responsible for the whole financial piece. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history and talk about how it's changed. We get a lot of questions about, so first of all, why am I paying taxes for this? And who are you and what do you do, right? So if we go back in history, actually the county ran the hospital. I'll go back to 56, all right? I was actually alive back then. So we started as originally a 27-bed hospital. It increased to 30, but in addition to, the county also ran a nursing home, okay? 46-bed nursing home. And what we found is that in 69, then they acquired the Sandstone Clinic, but it was operated by a private physician until 1977. And so you have to think about that a little bit like Gateway, because Gateway is actually operated by the doctors who run the clinic. So from 77 to 84, they became incorporated as a non-profit corporation. And I would call it a full service hospital. It had an ICU, it had an emergency room, it had a nursery, it had birthing rooms. It was a full service hospital. And then in 87, they transferred the clinic to the Sandstone Medical Group. Now, this is going to be the kind of from my perspective, this is when we're starting to see change. So in 87 to 89. So imagine a bunch of individuals running a hospital who didn't come from the healthcare industry, didn't come from a huge hospital system. I don't care if you're Allina or Fairview or Essentia or whoever it is. So what they found is it's a challenge to run a hospital. I can't even imagine it myself. And I'm on the hospital district. Can't imagine from a legal perspective, an insurance perspective, an operational perspective, a medical perspective, all the things that you have to, all the balls you're juggling to a hospital. And so what's happening is that financially they got into trouble. Okay. And they were nearing bankruptcy. So in 1980, what Fran was talking about was the statute that the state created. Okay, so having access to local hospital care, medical care, became critical for rural areas because no big system wanted to put all the dollars necessary to build a hospital in rural Minnesota. So the state stepped up and created this statute in order to make that happen. Now, some hospital districts are actually run by the hospital district, okay? But you don't have to do it that way. In our district, a group of leaders decided that it was important, even though we were in financial difficulty, to take advantage of that law and that statute. And as Fran said, so the townships and the cities got together and they formed the Northern Pine Area Hospital District. And that prevented the closure of the hospital in Sandstone. So the campus itself, so she talked about the 6 districts and now 12 townships that are involved. They chose to not run it themselves. They chose to hire an actual hospital system to come in and run the hospital. And Essentia was the chosen hospital district to do that. So the hospital is owned the the facilities. This part you have to explain to everybody. We own the facility and the campus. But our tenant operates the facility. So Essentia out of Duluth operates the facility. And as you all know, so what ended up happening is a new facility was built in 2017, May of 2017. They opened a hospital that you can see as you're going up 35 there. And the facility Essentia leases from the hospital district. And then they sublease to Gateway Family Clinic and to Thrifty White Pharmacy. So they are subleasing parts of that location to them so that we have a full service campus, pharmacy, clinic, and hospital. And that relationship between a clinic and a hospital is really, really critical. And I'm sure some of you have heard all the scuttlebutt that's gone on between Gateway and Essentia. We have to address it periodically. And I've learned a lot about how all those things work in the process. But so far, they each have long-term commitments to each other, just like Essentia has to us. We hold the bond and the mortgage on that hospital, but in essence, Essentia pays that mortgage every single month. So financially, we're in a really, really good position. I have to say that we're financially in a really good position. And every single month, Essentia gives us their financials on how the hospital is working, and they've done a really nice job. So financially, the hospital is in great shape. So now, the hospital district wants to ensure that moving forward, we work very closely and we partner with Essentia to make sure that they keep up to date on all the technology necessary. So whether that's the new 3D mammogram, we help pay for that to go in. When COVID came and they needed special ultrasound cleaning equipment to go into that hospital, we helped pay for that. So we, in essence, ensure that they stay up to date in a rural hospital, as much technology as we possibly can do for them. Because that's the brick and mortar part of it. But we're more than that from that perspective, and that's Fran's going to talk about. She's going to come back and talk a little bit about beyond the brick and the mortar that we do. What does the hospital district provide to this community? Thanks.
Okay, you move it to the next one. Thank you. Okay, so this is a slide about an assessment that was taken quite recently by Essentia Hospital. And they wanted to identify in the Pine County area, the northern Pine County area, what were some of the needs. And the two main ones that they identified were mental health and food security. And their suggestions for dealing with these concerns were community education, fresh food programs, and so people could learn about diet, physical activity, and sleep, food security, free or supported, support free or reduced school meals in the evening. That made me recall that during the pandemic, I noticed that in my little township out there, New Dosey, that there was a school vehicle, the school at Banning, that came out there and delivered food to a low-income family. And I was very glad to see that. They suggested that we promote the SNAP program, supplemental nutrition. Look it up here. Assistance program, it's food stamps. Okay. So this is what the hospital district is doing in those areas. We have a program called Forgivable Education Loans, whereby someone who is currently working for medical care or Essentia can apply for a loan for up to 2 years. No, for as many years, for 3 years. We will support them to an extent of up to $7,000 a year, up to $7,000 for them to get further education. With the contingency that when they have gotten their certificate or license, that they will then spend 2 years working for a medical facility within the boundaries of the hospital district, within the boundaries of the 11 townships and 6 cities. We have given about 5 or 6 of those so far. The woman who recently opened the medical facility right there across from the post office, she calls it Selah. She got a $7,000 forgivable loan from us for 3 years. So she could take classes at the University of Arizona and become a psychiatric nurse. We helped fund that education for her. We have also funded 2 of the EMTs so they can become paramedics. It's certainly known countywide, statewide, and nationwide that medical workers are in dire need. There's a shortage of medical staff everywhere. So we feel good about the fact that we are providing the education for EMTs to become paramedics. We also last year paid for all of the tuition, all of the supplies for 11 persons to become trained to be emergency technicians. We had a program with Pine Technical. They did all of it, of course, but we financed it. And we're very happy about having done that also. We put out a newsletter every other month. It's free and it comes with your shopper. I'm sure you're seeing it. I'm sure you just wait for it every month. We have a healthcare provider directory, and I'll leave these here for you. And this is a directory of all of the medical providers in Pine County. And they've all been updated. They've all been vetted. All of the information here is very, very current. Okay. And I'll leave that for you. Just help yourselves. Because of what they call food insecurity, which you probably know and I know is simply a euphemism for hungry people. Pine County has hungry people. And the first place I learned that was back when the county board, when I was the clerk for New Dozy Township, and the county board probably every 4 months would have a meeting in the evening where you would invite all the townships to come in and you'd have a program. One of your programs dealt with the demographics of Pine County. And that was the first time that I learned that there are hungry people in Pine County, because your speaker said, and these were his words, that Pine County has been federally designated as a food desert. And those words just stayed with me. So to that end, we have provided funding for the Family Pathways Food Shelf in Sandstone and for the Bruno Food Shelf. They write grants and we have provided funding for them. We also recently approved a grant for an organization called Community Connection Allies. They are sort of like a Meals on Wheels, and they go twice a week throughout northern Pine County, and they provide meals for people, for veterans, for low-income people, for seniors, and they've come out to my little township also. They would like to get a $7 donation, but if a person doesn't have the money, they give them the food anyway. Okay, so we recently approved a $3,000 grant request to that organization. Next is mental health education. About 4 years ago, before COVID, we had a speaker come up from NAMI, from Minneapolis, National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, and we did a one-day workshop all day on suicide prevention. We also have, well, I've already talked about what we did for the woman at SELA so she can become a psychiatric nurse. We provided funding so Gateway Clinic could be reimbursed for several of their COVID-19 supplies. We have given huge chunks of money to the hospital for the ambulance garage, for the infusion center, for their state-of-the-art 3D for mammograms. And we are sponsoring the Healthcare Leadership Coalition for Area Providers. If I'm ready for the next one.
Comment, hold on a second.
And the next one is simply, thank you, it's simply a list of our board members. So look for your township if you're in Northern Pine County and see who your representative is. And before I leave, I would like to ask Terry to try to find somebody to be a write-in township, to be a write-in for Heatley Township, because Gary Klein is leaving us after 23 years.
I know he is.
So get somebody to be written in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fran.
He's very excited about it.
Hey, I do have a question.
I do too.
You
Go ahead.
You go first.
So a lot of the townships that I represent are on this hospital district. And I've heard a lot of people saying that they want to be off of the hospital district because of the fact that it was created to keep the hospital functioning and so that we would have a hospital, but that's not a question anymore because Essentra's in and they're paying for all their own stuff now, basically. So the question is for these townships that want to say, okay, we did what we signed up to do. We kept the hospital here. It's doing well, it's functioning. Now we want out. What are the grounds for that? How can they make that happen?
My understanding is they can leave, but they still have to pay for the bond that we put in place when they were a member. When they were a member of the district, they signed into the bonding for the hospital.
So the statute that was created for hospital district, in order to leave, and that actually happened before my time, that actually happened, Hinckley tried to do that.
I think so.
And you had to bring a lawsuit against the hospital district. It was very expensive. And basically what the court said was, you have to show negligence on the part of the hospital district, not doing what they were set up to do in order to leave and not pay the levy. So it is legally possible to leave. It requires a lawsuit that the state then listens to understand whether or not. And at least at this point, it's been a challenge to do that. Our challenge is the fact that everyone has access to the hospital. Everyone does. But a handful of towns and townships actually pay the levy. And that's been a, shall we say, a difficult thing to address, because when we go to the other townships and say, would you please join us? They say, why would I do that? I'm getting it for free now.
Not everybody has a Fran. No.
Why would I do that? I'm getting it for free. I don't want to participate now. So that's the challenge. The levy has not increased for 23 years. And it's based on your property.
Out of curiosity, what
How much is it?
How much do you pay?
Okay, so I,
Let me take this one. $31 a year for every $100,000 of property. Of assets. For every $100,000, it's $31 a year.
Okay,
even very, very large acreages based on its not very much. We own 420 acres and it's $60.
We are well aware that the townships along Highway 48 belong to the district. Somewhat disgruntled. However, we have a different person representing our Lone Township.
Jim.
And the former person who represented them never came to a meeting, but had lots of negative things to say about us. This man is now coming to every meeting, and he's very pleased with what we're doing. Very, very pleased with what we're doing.
You are doing some really good things. I'm not belittling that in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, and there's you're correct in the sense that the hospital district could be dissolved. I mean, theoretically, it could be dissolved and you would go with the hope that Essentia would leave. They're under, I think there's 20 years left on their lease, okay? So, but just based on the financials that I've seen out of Duluth, Essentia could very easily say, yeah, we'll pay off the bond because they're held in bond, right? We'll pay that up, but we're not going to operate here because we got a facility in Moose Lake and we're looking at one tool further south on 35. So we might just leave this area. So we guarantee that they don't leave this area.
Okay.
Okay, so we make sure that local access to Sandstone Hospital is available. So yes, we could. We even looked at the finances of doing that, but it didn't make any sense. Our budget is $225,000 a year, and we're using those dollars to, in essence, ensure that the community stays healthy, mentally, physically healthy as much as we possibly can. And that ended up leading to mental health things that her program does, as well as really and truly, even the food shelves, because a lot of people ask that question. Really, you have to give money to the food shelves, do you understand how essential what you eat is to your health? It's very essential, particularly with children. So we're trying to make sure that we cover the health.
I was reading all the things you did during COVID too. And, you weren't only doing it in your districts. I noticed that restaurants in Pine City, which is not part of the hospital, were benefiting from, when they were shut
We try to
down.
work with all of the healthcare groups throughout the county. The Leadership Coalition and all of those kinds of things. We are trying to help across the county, not just within our districts, though our dollars, generally speaking, have to go to physically serves the community that's actually paying.
well, thank you very much. It was very informative.
Thank you.
I'll just leave you with one hot tip. Hot tip. Contact our public health administrator, Samantha Lowe. Okay.
Yes, we're very
The treasurer.
And those directories, please help yourself. I know that there's an online version of it. So if you're looking for the latest and greatest, that's.
I was just saying.
Thank you.
Now, what is your name again? We know Fran really well, but. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move right on to Initiative Foundation Impact Update from Carl.
Morning, Mr. Chair, morning, commissioners.
I understand you got a tour of Pine County this morning?
I did, yeah, I went to the wrong place. I apologize for that.
It's all right, we've all done that.
The impact update meeting.
Yep.
Packet. It did. Excellent. Well, I'll start there. And again, I really appreciate your time. And I know you have a full agenda, so I'll try and be concise and then just get to any questions. But just always like to start with our impact update. As you can see, we try to track the total amount of contributions we collect from within a county and compare that with the investment that we're able to make back into that county. The impact update starts or is the cumulative of 1986 through 2021. And you can see 876,000 in local donations collected and 6.5 million returned in investments back into Pine County. And we just calculate a simple ROI for comparison. But so for every dollar we collect from Pine County, we're able to invest about $7.40 back into the county. And it's a very simple calculation. It doesn't include staff time, mileage, all that. It's just donations collected and grants and loan lending, et cetera, invested back into the county. Right below that, a little more, just a few economic impact stats. Since 1986, 611 grants for 3.6 million, 44 loans totaling 2.39 million, creating or retaining 613 jobs and leveraging 11.5 million in outside capital. And so that's a quick snapshot of our economic and community development work. And just under that, we are also function as what would be a traditional community foundation. So we host lots of donor advised funds or charitable funds. 3 of those funds are active here in Pine County, making grants and supporting different initiatives. Here, that's the Greater Pine Area Endowment, the Child Care and Early Childhood Education Fund, and the Tollefson Scholarship Fund are the 3 funds active here in Pine County. So that's kind of the cumulative numbers from 1986. I thought I would just give a little more recent snapshot. In 2021 specifically, we provided 64 grants in Pine County for a total of $661,000. In our lending in Pine County, currently, we do offer a lot of gap lending and try to get involved in some gap projects. And folks will often ask us, exactly how does your lending work? We work typically with banks that would be involved in a project, would approach us and say, this is a great project. We'd really like it to stay in this rural community, for example. We're not comfortable funding the whole loan. We'll fund X amount. Would the foundation be willing to take a second position or maybe help with owner, investment or whatever that might be? So that's where we would tap into our lending funds and kind of help those projects get through. We have, looks like 1 active loan in Pine County, about a $200,000 project investing in 8 jobs. I think since 2019 through 2021, we've had 5 active loan projects in Pine County. And again, generally in partnership, almost always with local financial institutions as well there. One other quick snapshot that I'd like to provide. Folks have kind of asked us, what does your COVID relief efforts look like in total through 2020 and 2021? And then wrapping up a few projects even here in 2022. We're glad to put COVID behind us. We're not allowed to make grants to for-profit entities, but in the emergency situation of COVID, we were allowed to do that and facilitated almost 2,000 grants to for-profit businesses in partnership with DEED. That's all expired. And so we've kind of put all that COVID work behind us. But in total, in Pine County, our COVID grant making resulted in about 326 grants for about $2.3 million in 2020, 2021, and 2022. I should also note that about $1.5 million of that is our work facilitating Pine County's own CARES Act grants. So you guys, brought in that money and decided who the grants were to go to, and we just kind of facilitated that for you. So didn't want to take credit for money that we didn't actually, so to say, bring to you, but we were happy to partner and help you make that happen. Couple quick highlights also. We're still working with First Children's Finance. We believe access to affordable childcare is critical across our region. We see many communities where it is a primary barrier to recruiting a workforce. Folks just can't move to a community if there's a 3-year wait list for childcare. And we've found that in several communities in rural Minnesota. Folks said just 36 months wait list to get children. So they look for other communities to live in. Here in Pine County, we're working with First Children's Finance in a project that we're in partnership with Minnesota Department of Education. They have finished the assessment of the need in the county and are moving into this engagement, I would say, process where they'll be engaging community members and forming a strategy and really kind of deciding what the next steps forward are. We will be partnering with them for a $10,000 implementation grant on those strategies. I think in a nutshell, we would say the goal is to really bring lasting change, systematic change that really helps people access affordable childcare. Last highlight I would bring, in late 2021, we had a large private foundation approach us and ask us if we would like to do some emergency COVID relief lending for businesses. And we replied back and said, no, actually, we feel like businesses still need a little more grant relief. No one's really in the mood for a loan. We really believe grants are the right solution. And we feel like a lot of nonprofits have been left out of COVID relief. So we'd like to ask you to give us that amount. It was about $2 million for grants to businesses and nonprofits. It was a little bit of a bold move for us, but we feel like we've got our finger on the pulse of the region. And so we pitched that back to them. And this family foundation circled back around and said, yeah, we'd like to do that. We'd like to grant you the $2 million. We want to see it go to businesses and nonprofits. We were able to fund 4 what we call transformative grants to nonprofits here in Pine County, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 grants. We wanted to go to nonprofits and say, what do you need to really move the needle on the issue you're addressing? Let's kind of go way beyond what we might usually grant and really help you implement a project. And 4 of those projects were in nonprofits that are impacting Pine County here. And it's just a great example of, I think, the value we like to bring to the region. We like to go out and capture that money from outside the region and bring it in and put it to work here. We got bold after that project with that private family foundation. And when Wells Fargo Foundation circled around and said, would you like some more COVID relief lending? We said, no, we'd like more COVID relief grants for local businesses. And we're actually able to convince them to do the same thing and to just allocate that money into our region just as a grant fund for emergency COVID relief grants for small businesses. So I'm happy to just keep doing that work and keep not only deploying our own resources in the region, but going outside and seeking those resources. And as that, we'd like to say thank you to you for your support. I often get caught up in most of the grant writing projects, and we will very often leverage our list of supporters and say, we have the support of our cities and our counties for our work to justify, their trust in us to say, yeah, here's $2 million, put it to work in the region. We can see that people are behind what you do and you have good, broad regional support, cities, counties, lots of individual and corporate support. So we leverage that to bring in those external funds. And so because of that, we really appreciate your support and your annual contribution. So I would leave it there and be happy to take any questions if anybody has any. Great.
I was working for the auditor's office when we went through the COVID, and I just thought what a blessing to have somebody else determine who's going to get what, because, for us to tell local people, we're going to do this. So it was just really nice to have somebody else step up and say, nope, we did all the homework on it and it's going to go this way. So yeah, thank you for all you do.
Yeah.
I would echo that. It would have been an overwhelming task.
Yes.
We're good, but we don't have the staff. We just don't have staff to do that kind of work.
We were very happy that we were able to we shifted. At one time, we had 29 staff. We had 27 of them working on COVID relief projects. Our whole staff were kind of just focusing on what's important, and that's what we like to do. So again, thank you.
I think prior to that and going forward, we're just very pleased with what you've been able to offer small businesses in Pine County. When a question comes up, it seems like the question is always, have you talked to the Initiative Foundation?
Sure.
And when somebody says yes, people listen. It's like the E.F. Hutton ad, because you carry some weight with people, and we appreciate the work you do.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate your support, and feel free to reach out anytime there's ideas or solutions or any challenges. Don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again for your time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for driving north.
Snake River Watershed Management Plan submission. Where are we at here?
You're to the point where we approve it.
Terry, would you like me to speak or
Yes,
want to carry it?
for it.
Either way. So in the memorandum of agreement that we've entered with the other entities within the watershed, we spell out how we're going to submit the plan once it's drafted. So now we have a final draft. We had the state agencies review it. We held 2 public hearings, one here and one Mora. And then we reviewed all the comments and provided responses, made some edits. And then on September 26th, the Snake River Policy Committee voted affirmatively to move forward with the draft. So now, as described in the MOA, all entities must make a formal motion to approve the plan to be submitted to Bowser, the Minnesota Board of Water and Soil Resources. So that is our request for today. Once submitted to Bowser, they have 90 days to review it and approve it or request modifications.
This pretty much needs to be done this month.
We are at the staff level, we've set our sights on getting things wrapped up as quickly as we can at this point, so we can make a deadline for fiscal year 2023 funding.
Right.
And we're down to the wire on that.
So are you making a motion, Terry?
I will make, well, okay, so just as an acknowledgement, we have the issue with different counties about the Mille Lacs Band, and we did get Mille Lacs Band is back in there. It was a 7-2 vote? Were there 9 of us?
It was 6-2.
6-2. So, so the 2 were 2 different county commissioners that voted no, and everybody else on the watershed voted to accept it the way that it was written. So with the fact of having Mille Lacs Band back on it, I would like to make a motion that we approve what this committee that worked so hard, thank you for all your work on this, did.
I'll second.
Got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And Terry, maybe if I can just put a little nuance on the Lacs Band. So what the committee did is incorporated the language recognizing the Mille Lacs Band presence in the watershed into the document. There previously have been discussion about including the Mille Lacs Band as a member. Right, and I just want to be sure people aren't mixing that up. There was not a vote.
That never went
Right.
anywhere.
No, so this is just to include language recognizing Mille Lacs Band as a governmental unit that owns property in the watershed.
Sure.
Yeah.
So did the band ever sit in any of the meetings or were they invited to sit?
I don't believe so.
Early on in the process.
That's Josh.
Then they have one more.
Yep.
So when Bowser finishes their 90-day, I can't remember, is that it? It's fine. Or is that?
Yes, well, then, yes, it'll come back to the counties to adopt.
Thank you.
If I could ask one question on the adoption, at this point, it does not look like there'll be a unanimous adoption by the 4 counties. If it's not unanimous or if it's not a majority, does the next step change? Does it still go to Bowser and it's just on these counties supported and these didn't, or does it not go to Bowser?
So I guess my question, I'm gonna take on to that, because with that, can we make the motion today to accept it as it is, because this is where we support it? But if they decide at the next meeting, which is next Monday, they're going to tweak the language a little bit more, and if we agree upon that language, can we make it part of that motion that we would, because it needs to be approved to go to Bowser this, we're not going to be able to get that funding for 2023. So if they tweak it to the point where it's something that we can live with, could we make the motion so that it would go either way, just to give that leeway to change?
Here's my feeling.
I just want to get it done.
I don't have a problem with that, because if we were operating as a joint powers
Right.
and you're our representative, we've told you to go to the game and play your best game. And if you feel good about it, we'll support you.
Okay.
And so with that in mind, I have every bit of trust in you that you will support Pine Counties. You know where our underlying feelings, and you are the person that's there.
Well,
What's the tweak going to be? Do you know?
I don't know. I talked to Rick after the library meeting last Monday, And he had stated that they've already gotten Deanna working on tweaking the language. They just wanted it different. And so I called Deanna and I said, is this for real? Because we haven't even voted on it yet. And she said, no, no, they're kind of confused. So they have some language that there's and I'm thinking that it has to do with on this page where it says Native American communities, and I can't pronounce them, but it's Pine City in Pine County, and then portions of a different village, or I don't know, community of the Mille Lacs Band, and then that's in Isle and Mille Lacs County, and then another one that's in Hinkley and Pine. And I think that they didn't like that those were listed as much, so it might just be taking out those. I honestly don't know, but I mean, if it's keeping the Mille Lacs Band name in it because they are a government entity within this unit. You know, I think.
This is just a committee, Dave, that's it, or the board?
That it's the one watershed, one policy board committee.
So it's a committee.
That's why it has to come back to you now.
Huh?
That's why it's coming through you.
Yes, I worry about doing another both ways, because then you're given, I suppose if we authorize that authority to a committee member.
I kind of think the other entities won't word their motions like that. So and it needs to be, the way the MOA was structured was that all entities must approve submission. It doesn't say majority thereof. So if someone says, no, we don't want this language, either we have to edit the language to make everybody happy, or they would have to withdraw from the MOA or something. And to bring it back, why is this so important? I think a couple of the members of the policy committee from other counties had asked that we delete all of this language, and we mostly did. We satisfied, even though it was a minority of the members, we mostly deleted it. It got submitted to Bowser, and their comment was that this language does not meet minimum statutory requirements, that you must acknowledge tribal presence in the watersheds. So it's like, if we water it down too much and remove too much of that language, we might go through 90 days and get it denied. And then it slows the whole process down, and we lose out on $300,000 for watershed improvement. So
I think in answer to your question, Terry, I think technically you could do a motion that gave you some authority to agree to minor language changes consistent with the direction of the county board and the preferences of the county board. But from Caleb, I'm understanding that probably is not realistic, because I agree with him. I don't think the other jurisdictions are going to come with authority for their members to negotiate final language. And then at some point, it just isn't being faithful to the process that everyone had agreed to, that we'll draft a proposal, we'll circulate it, we'll get public feedback, we'll get feedback from the membership. We got an agreement from the policy committee, divided, but a clear majority of support, and now it's at each county board for consideration.
Okay, so I make a motion that we approve it as it is today.
I'll second.
Any more discussion?
I do have one little discussion.
Did you
The
want to come
two-
join me on Monday?
Maybe, but I gotta look at my schedule. The other thing is, it's obviously Kennebec and Mille Lacs.
And then
And they
Aiken,
just don't like the tribe.
Aiken did not vote on, well, yeah, so it was an interesting meeting. One of them was very angry and he just wanted them out. And I asked him what his issue was, and he said, I don't like them. And it was inappropriate. It was, I probably shouldn't have asked the question, but I did. But that's where it's coming from.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. I think the next one is easier. It's Lower St. Croix Watershed Grant Work Plan and Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan Amendment, which is basically authorizing the the work that they have planned to do for the coming year, correct, Caleb?
Correct. Yeah, the main thing I want to highlight in this, in the fiscal year 2023 grant work plan is that Rock Creek and Rock Lake are still among the priority areas for agricultural best management practices. So if there's farmers in the Rock Creek area that want to do feedlot improvements or fix erosion problems on their fields or whatever it may be, they are a high priority for this fiscal year for funding. So it's a good place to be. There was one of the partners had requested a minor modification to the plan itself because this is a joint powers collaboration and not a joint powers entity. All of the local boards have to consider that. So we are considering adding Valley Creek and Kelly's Creek to the regionally significant streams, as well as a list of sub-watershed assessments. Relatively minor changes to the comprehensive watershed management plan. As well, we're seeking approval of the fiscal year 23 grant work plan. Along with designating Chisago SWCD as the fiscal agent for that.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
A second it.
Motion by Moore, or seconded by Lovegren. Approve the Lower St. Croix plan as outlined. Any discussion? Not all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll move on to the third quarter budget update.
And Ryan is bringing it up there. I think, you know, as the memo starts, the budget sounds for 75% into the year. And then we are seeing pressure for fuel and utility costs, which surprises exactly nobody. And so those are not significant enough in the county total budget. But if you look at a line item basis, those are the ones where we're exceeding budget. Chart 1 shows the revenue and expenditures in all of the major funds. Everything is about where we would expect it to be. It's tracking relatively well to, you know, historical data. Chart number 2 is revenue in the general fund by budget department. So these are the places where we have non-property tax revenue. Again, no real surprises. Recorder fees are a little bit lower than they were a year ago. Again, I think that would fit with what you would feel with regard to recorded real estate documents, fewer real estate transactions, fewer refinancings, et cetera. But again, nothing that is significant in the context of the whole budget. Chart 3 is looking at expenditures in the general fund major departments. You see the recorder fund again pop out at you. That's really paying for computer systems out of the accumulated reserve. So it's not a budget issue. It's not a revenue issue. We're spending planned use of reserves. And you see a little bit, I call out the sheriff's office because they are, trending a little bit higher than most. Their budget drivers, fuel is a little more their budget and overtime is a little more of their budget. But in the context of the total budget, again, I don't think there's any need to be concerned at this point. And then the last slide is the slide where if you look in the second set of bars from the left, social services, in the initial copy that went out, those were reversed. So revenue is actually less than expenditures, which is what we would expect at this time of year. But overall, everything is looking below 75% spent, which is very positive. So at the end of the third quarter, I think everything is positive. The trends we're seeing mirror statewide and national trends with regard to pricing on some items. So I certainly would take questions.
When I look through the packet, David, it's almost laughable, but it's not, that we just got done with the 2021 audit. We're looking at third quarter expenditures.
Yes, and if if you want to look ahead, right, so you have 2021, we just talked about this meeting, we talked about 2022. Next meeting, we're going to talk about 2023 and some updates to the 2023 budget since you adopted the preliminary levy.
We'll move on then to commissioner updates. We had a meeting with the Mille Lacs Band and Corporate Ventures. I thought it was pretty exciting. Harry, your take?
I thought it was really interesting. It's gonna, what they're trying to do is to figure out how to put a new interchange at Hinckley area. And so it's going to be interesting to see when it's actually finalized, what they think that the best deal is, because they're still looking at, the thing that I thought was really interesting is that they are opening the idea for having a new exchange, just a mile south of the Highway 48 one, which really surprised me. I didn't think that they would go with having a whole new, I mean, that's like boo-hoo bucks. The part that I didn't like was when Mark added that we'd be the ones paying for it. That was not such a good thought process. So they have 4 different ideas and they walked through them all, and they're still doing a lot of research on it. They didn't really trigger they did the least busy months and the busy months, and they were off on those, I think, which was brought up by the city of Hinckley on that also. But yeah, it was really interesting.
I think my takeaway is on major projects like this, how long, we've heard about this already for a while. And we're probably looking at, I don't know, 5 more years before the first shovelful of dirt gets thrown. I mean, they're just such long processes.
But the part that was really exciting is you had the county, you had the city, you had Mille Lacs Band, you had Corporate Ventures, you had all these different organizations, and they're working together, and it was positive.
And MnDOT.
Right, and MnDOT was there, yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, that's the part I like. Facility committee was canceled. Pine City
College Initiative
meeting. We kind of had a little bit of a roundtable to talk about how do we help, how do we move forward with this college initiative? I mean, we set a finite amount of money aside so students from all over the county could attend Pine Tech, and I think the number we saw was 49. I believe was the number 49.
49 for 2 years.
40. I think 49 right now are started this fall on this countywide program, and so I believe 89 in the 2 years.
That's how it costs for 2 years is 89.
Yeah, the cost was way less than we anticipated it to be. So I think our charge is to go back and rack our brains and see who can we tap to get some ongoing funding to make this thing a reality for forever, basically.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
So our meeting with the school districts and Pine Tech and Community College next Wednesday, Joe is going to give an update and review some of that detail as well.
Jack Fall Retreat.
Basically, it was all set on transformation. We haven't done anything with public health since the 70s. I want to say it was like 76 is when public health was created. And we haven't done any updates since then. And we know that the world has changed a lot since the 70s.
So back into this county just a few years ago. It's standing.
Oh, yeah, because, and there's not a lot of the counties that are standalone. A lot of them have multi-counties. which is, it's good. I mean, I can see the purpose, but then the counties don't know what's going on. So you talk to the other county commissioners, they have no idea what's happening in public health. So that's what they're working on is transformation. And that was one of the things that was brought up for us to vote on. And it was it tied for number 5. So it was a lot of what we can do, how we can work together. We're one of the only states where the counties work with the state and together on public health. Everybody else, they have the county or they have the state, but we're I think we are the only one that works together, which is pretty cool. The other thing that we did is we toured the VA in St. Cloud, and that was really interesting. And they have the same issue with workforce. And so what they're doing is they're offering people to go to school and then they have to come back and work for the VA for so many years. And so that's one of the ways that they're getting people. And I was thinking about that with our officers and our correctional officers is if we paid for them to do their schooling that they need to do, and then they have to come and give us 2 years of service or whatever, you know what they were just talking there too, that might be another way to get some initiatives going.
And Mr. Chair, I feel like I have to put in a plug. In some of the money that we gave as part of our Pine College initiative, Joe Mulford worked out a plan with Fond du Lac College that if there is somebody who is eligible for the Pine County College Initiative scholarships, they can take that to Fond du Lac College and get a law enforcement degree under that same idea that they would not have to pay for it.
But then at that meeting, I asked Joe how that was going and if anybody signed up, and he said nobody. And he also stated that one of his friends is at a technical college where that's what they do is they train officers, and they're really down on numbers. So I mean, we're foreseeing that it's going to be an issue. So whatever we can do to help create better will be good.
Regional Juvenile Advisory Committee.
I will take that. Terry is on the call, so if I.
Yep, he just popped up.
Yeah, so he might jump in. Yeah, we had our meeting. First thing we did is they're gonna up the rates. Members, our rate last year was $285, now it's gonna be $295 a day. And then non-members are going from $345 to $355 a day. And we budget. The actual cost is $107,675 for 2023, and we budgeted $110, so we're okay there. And then there was a lot of discussion happening. And this is where Terry L may have referred to, but there's so many closures of juvenile facilities and stuff, so there's a lot of counties that are just paying as they go, and that's loading up the system. And that discussion was going for an extended period of time, and then some changes in the 21-day evaluations where insurance doesn't cover it. And that's $1,100 an evaluation. So far, we don't use those so often. But so at the end of that, I asked, so what happens? You know, we're paying for a confident bed. And what happens if you don't have room when we want to put somebody in there? We're paying. And the chair, who was from Stearns Company, jumped in and said that just happened to them. But what they do is they have other beds available in the county, and they shuffle the clients around and make room because we're paying. We will be accommodating, but the day may come because they're limited to 111, I think. So if it gets loaded up, the day may come.
Well, with the lack of facilities, it's going to come.
Right, with the lack of facilities.
We contract for one bed, right?
One bed.
And we generally use one bed on average throughout the year.
We've been running a little behind.
Okay.
So, and this is what I don't know for sure, but let's say they're full, or if they get full and someone else is using our bed.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to pay. But I don't know if that's right. And that's where, Terry, can you grab that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just a couple other clarifications. First, there's now 13 members in this group. Freeborn County came on board May 5th, Aiken County September 1st, and then Stearns increased their membership from 1 to 2 beds on October 1st. Thus far this year, they're trending towards the largest non-member bed usage in history of the facility. It's plus 230 days from this point last year, averaging 32 and a half beds per day, up from 27 last year. And the facility is 36 at capacity. When Commissioner Ludwig talked about they can shuffle people around, campus-wide, they have 111 beds. That includes their non-secure program and their Anoka County Secure program, which is more for the Anoka folks there's 50 beds in that facility. So there is an opportunity, more often than not, we'll get a bed. If you're a non-member and you're in that facility and a member has a need for a bed, the non-member juvenile is going to have to find a place to go. And that's the value of the membership. Now, the question came up for both Commissioner Ludwig and one of the Sherburne County commissioners, with this expansion, with these other counties coming in, that's good to a point. And then you get to the point where there's, kind of a saturation of the bed usage. And unless you expand the facility, now you're going to run the risk of getting too many members in, not enough beds. And then now what happens? And so one of the Sherburne County commissioners asked if another wing was going to get built. Are they going to offer more types of programming? And Anoka's leadership indicated that it's not been looked at from an architectural perspective at this point. But there may be some pressure in the future. The problem is if you've ever stepped foot on that property, there's not a lot of land around it. And then there's a prison that abuts up against it. So I don't know how much room they would have to expand unless you can go upwards or whatever, but there is a growing need. So this kind of goes back to the board's decision last year to remain in the membership. Commissioner Ludwig and I have talked recently, and hadn't we done that, there'd be a big problem today. Yeah, we're underutilizing our bed space, but that trend has gone up as well in the last several months, where we've used that, at least on the short-term basis, more than we probably had in recent times. So being a member does have its benefits. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks. U of M extension, did anybody get to the Natural Field Day? I was hoping to go, but nature came up. East Central Solid Waste Commission, things are plugging away there. I don't know, actually going along. I don't think a Packer broke down or a semi broke down in a whole month. That's pretty good. East Central Regional Library.
It was a very quiet meeting and it went fast and it was just pay bills as normal.
Nice to have them once in a while.
Yeah.
All crop presentation through Chemical Coalition.
So this is a presentation that came up that they strongly talked about. And so I signed up for it, but it ended up that I signed up for special opioid echo event instead. So I did not get to do the talk up, but I did the special opioid event. It was really interesting to me. I found, we always hear about Black homicides. You hear about that all the time on the radio, but there's way more deaths with middle-aged white men suicides that you don't ever hear about, because we have so many issues with men feeling that they need to be all of these things. And, you can't be everything that you believe that you could be. So that's when they were talking rural areas, that's us. That's one of the issues that we're dealing with is middle-aged white men suicides. And that just really hit me as being strong. So.
Arrowhead Transit. Debbie, do you know if that meeting actually happened last Wednesday?
I believe it did.
I'm having an awful time. I got to get reconnected with the lady that heads them up, because I don't know if I dropped off her email list or not, but,
I'll follow up with her.
okay. I'm not getting any notices from her, so
Okay.
thank you. Soil and Water District,
I was traveling to the Grand Portage when they had their last one, so I missed it. I did get the minutes, so if anybody wants to review them, I can forward them to them.
AMC District 1 meeting. JJ, Terry,
It was good. You know, the one that really hit me, we were talking about percentages that, the levy, what people are looking at, and Coach is looking at a 22% levy increase this year because of a jail. And they said they could still go down, but that's kind of where they were at. The one thing that really struck, and not a lot of people had it on there, but more people, you know, once you started looking at it, was unfunded mandates as being one of their big issues, or lack of state support. But wages was a big one, new staff, being able to get correctional officers was huge for all of them. We did the vote for Pine County, or for that Northern District, and the number one issue is PILT. The number two issue was the CPA. The number three was the SSIS. And the number four was housing, and then number five was a tie between solid waste, local public health, and the bonding bill. So that's kind of where our region stood as to what our top concerns are.
Did they talk about preliminary levies at all?
They did.
Yeah, we
Actually, I can give you this.
won the,
Oh, wait, no, that's, I think you want this one instead. Yeah, we were low.
we were the lowest of that group.
Everybody that had a jail seemed to be way up there.
Yeah.
That was a pattern.
And Coach, they were to the point where they were going to shut them down. And so they have to do something. And so they're the ones that went to 22%.
Interestingly enough, all of those counties had not always the same story, but
Yeah.
because of unfinished legislative business, it impacted every county in one way or the other. Either they had the PILT bill basically in the bag and it never got across the finish line.
Mhm.
They got county program aid. They had some of that almost to the finish line. Got it done. But,
You know, the other thing that was really interesting is they're getting that federal Pilton water where we're going to be getting the $50,000. So Cook County is one of the big ones. They're going to be getting $1,019,000, but they're still increasing their levy by 5.5. And the other one that's getting a huge amount is St. Louis County. They're getting 1.3.5 million. And they are increasing theirs by 4.39%.
And the number on that new funding program, that one-time funding program where we're getting the 50,000,
Yeah,
that was not known prior to most preliminary levies.
so they'll probably come down
So
there.
that gives an opportunity for those counties and us
Okay,
to consider that.
and Carlton gets nothing,
right.
a zero.
Yeah.
They weren't happy.
What was this, Terry?
Yeah,
Yeah, then also to add to that, Cook County, which has a population of 5,200 people, is receiving $1,019,000.
because they have a lot of state and federal land up there.
Federal, mostly federal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sheet,
St. Louis.
that funding that in the sheet that Terry and JJ are holding, that's driven by the federally owned pill land.
Yep.
So let's see,
Do you want to talk about district?
what's that?
About you can do the public surplus where they'll auction off the forfeited land.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we should talk about at the land committee.
I thought we already did that.
I think we did too, and we decided that we don't have that much that we sell. And what it would cost us to do it versus what we actually get for it. And we have a really, really good outcome when we do our land sales. We have a lot of people that come to them and and look for them. And I don't know if we would do any better if we did go with something like that.
I think,
I guess it's out there for a few years.
I think the auction thing is really geared for those lots or that sale is geared for those smaller lots that show up in the city that don't garner much interest locally. That's just my opinion, but the Northeast Minnesota Area Transportation Partnership, it was actually a big watershed moment. Mark and the rest of the county engineers have worked on this new formula for quite a while. Northeast Minnesota had for 30 or 40 years had this formula that basically Duluth got 40% of this money as transportation money, and the rest of the counties got 60% to divide up. And so that is going to change now so that they get 23% of the money and we get 77%. So I think that, you know, by the time that filters through 11 counties, it's probably earth shattering, but it's makes you feel better anyway. And the lady representing the city of Duluth actually made the second on that motion, just to prove the point that she was not feeling ill will over it. She understood she was beat anyway. Law library.
Yeah, we did have a meeting. Basically just went over, we paid the IT department, and the other thing we did talk about again was obsolete library materials. I think they're working with the jail a little bit. You got any?
All on that, actually.
You did, okay.
We implemented electronic version of law library in jail that inmates use on their texting device. Because we get, as you noted, obsolete law library materials, so it doesn't do any good.
Okay, so.
We're working at how we're gonna dispose of those.
Okay. Are you guys helping the law library then, or is it just, no? Okay, sounds good. Then we'll discuss how we're gonna get rid of them, but.
You have a bunch of them too, Rod?
What's that?
You have a bunch of them down there too?
As far as the law library.
Do you have, yeah,
These?
no, do you have some of the old books and stuff now
Oh,
down
yeah,
there?
we have a full section, but they're older books, and we get them from upstairs once they come old, and we get them. So
So you guys should put your heads together on how to get rid of them then. If you've got a bunch and the law library has a bunch.
yeah, and we're seeing how the electronic version works first before we go make that. But it is working well.
That's it.
Okay,
I have another.
other, yeah,
If I can,
go ahead.
can I make a report on the probation worker?
Yep.
Okay. It was a great brainstorm. I missed the first meeting. It's down at AMC on St. Paul. The first thing I want to say is probation officers work behind the scenes and nobody knows what's going on. I mean, and I was 27 years in law enforcement and I had contact with them. But I had no idea, you know, there's daily load. You know, they're kind of like social workers in a way. You just, but you don't see or hear about these probation officers, and they get tasked with a lot of work. So that's part of the problem with this funding. I think nobody even knows they're silent working. You know, the sheriff's office has a sheriff that's in the public. That, you know, the deputies are always in the news. They see it happening, and then, you know, county attorneys and all that stuff. There's a huge load of work that happens in probation that has really zero press. So it doesn't get the attention in the public safety, which is a big thing right now. And then, you know, and what I'm talking about are funding. You know, they were mandated to do it or pick up a manner to do it. And since 1996, they have not funded us on that mandate at their 50%. So that's the whole purpose of this work group. So in this brainstorming session, we kind of ended up, we got to be pretty free speaking. And I learned so much from probation officers and, you know, and Terry, you know, we have a great probation director. But they have a job that nobody really wants too, you know, it's difficult. It's, I mean, it's not like it's a glory job. It's a total service job. So I think my biggest takeaway, and that's what I want us all to realize, I work with these people and I really don't know how entailed their work is, you know, their workload and what's put on top of them, you know, pre-sentence investigations and all that. I'm kind of familiar with it, but I asked the guy sitting next to me, I said, so if you had a pre-sentence investigation, they work for the court. And at that point, and then what does that take? Well, it could take a day, day and a half just to get that stuff brought to the court. Oh yeah, depends on the history of the individual. You know, and we used in law enforcement, we use criminal histories all the time when we're doing our work, you know, to develop probable cause and stuff. But that was the extent, you know, we don't dig into what, how this guy did to the system. So anyway, so in the end, it's like, how do you get the public or, you know, the legislative body to see and understand that work that happens in this part of the system? So that's where the kind of part of the focus will be on that. So anyway, it was a good meeting.
Thanks for being on that.
What if you could have somebody from the state come up and spend a day with them from the legislatures or something, just to see what, like we did with SSIS.
I don't know. Yeah, we do that. Yeah.
Let them see.
We'll see what comes out of it. It'll get pared down.
All right. Any other? Correction officer dispatch labor agreement proposal update.
Ryan, you want to close the meeting or do you want to do it in open?
I think we were gonna have a closed session, weren't we?
Yep. And so if you want a brief break or do you want to jump right into it?
Take 3 minutes.
Do we have to read the thing to go into closed meeting, Dave? You already got it, yeah.
Yeah, so whenever we reconvene after the 3-minute break, we'll just.
You're gonna do it here?
Yeah, we'll do it here. And then Ryan will just mute and turn off all the audio visual stuff. Yeah, handy dandy screen that says the board is meeting in closed session. Look at that.
Says it where? Oh.
What was the guy with the ponytail, the story of
Oh, the
Joe?
band member. Joe's the one that took us on the tour. It was Billy.
Billy. Take me to the
But
story about the Snake River.
yeah,
That
yeah.
was pretty good. And Kennebec is a snake pony.
Bears. You know, that whole thing is just on my radar.
It's been in my brain
I
too,
can't get it out.
because I am so happy you're sticking to your guns, because I keep thinking, I told that guy, I said, you know, when you guys owned all of this land, the water wasn't polluted. Now we got people that don't even want you to sit on the bench or sit at a table with us and talk about cleaning the water up. That does not make sense.
You know, when you think about it, we have the opportunity to do something that's going to create a legacy for all of our kids and grandkids. And to have that be Buddhism, just sucks. It's like, you know, and the fact that, well, okay, so I got a letter from one of the guys from Soil and Water, the county, and that's his concern. And so he sent an email to the administrator. He checked with me first. He said, I'm not gonna list you, but he sent a letter to the administrator and said, is he speaking for me, the county? You know, talked about the comments and like them. Is he speaking for the county? Is he speaking for the Soil and Water District, or is he speaking for himself? So it was brought up at the county board meeting, from what I understand, and they said, no, he was not speaking for us. It's like, you know, yeah.
Maybe he'll get lucky and he won't get reelected.
And I just said, that's.
I don't know
But
how
then I
much.
asked what the other guys like, and I said, really, this guy, he's more willing to talk about things when he's got this.
Start somebody else. I mean, I just think, how can openly say that? I mean, that's just.
Well, he threw his sunglasses on right after, so he knew he was wrong.
I mean, I'm expecting when the Indians owned it. Yeah, it wasn't polluted.
Yeah, they're gonna have to work against that. Yeah.
Wasn't that, well, maybe they can help us figure out how to clean it up.
I just don't understand how. Yeah, hey, whatever, I guess.
Well,
So we're not getting.
the guy that,
Other people.
Denny, I like Denny. He says,
That's part of it.
we're on the town. Well, so, did he? How can seize them, a license? Garbage hauling license?
Maybe.
How can you give them a license? The Pine County license. How can you give them a license? They're citizens of Pine County.
If they fit the criteria, why can't you?
Okay, we're about to go into closed session. This portion of the meeting may be closed pursuant to MS 13D.03. The board desires to close this meeting. The following motion should be considered. Who's going to make the motion?
I move to close this meeting as provided by Minnesota statute 13D.03 to consider negotiation strategies and discuss and review labor negotiation proposals for negotiations conducted pursuant to Minnesota statute 79A.01 to 179A.25.
The second is, Matt got it.
Personnel issue, haven't, that's all.
Nope, that's fine.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there any other business we need to attend to? Not, we'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.